My name is Jason, and I'm currently a student here at the University of Lethbridge. In the course of my studies, particularly during my Globalization Studies class, I became interested in the term globalization. I wanted to find out what this word truly means. To do that, I went on a quest for understanding. My first stop along the way was Professor of Globalization Studies, Dr. Anthony Hall.
The word globalization became very prominent in the 1990s. The Soviet Union had imploded, and after 1992 there suddenly was no Soviet Union. The Berlin Wall came down in 1989. Prior to these events, we were caught in the midst of what they called a Cold War, a conflict between two different systems of government, of political economy, a capitalist system and a communist system. Capitalism led by a coalition of countries with the United States at the core, and communism with the Soviet Union going back to the Russian Revolution of 1917 led by Lenin. Once the Soviet Union was no longer there, there was a kind of a lot of enthusiasm to expand global capitalism to the entire planet, to the globe, to fulfill the transformation of multinational corporations, transnational corporations into fully global corporations to encompass the entire planet with a single banking regime, a single banking system. And this process acquired the name of globalization. I think, though, that globalization is a much older phenomena than the 1990s. I go back to 1492 when Christopher Columbus got the idea that the world is round, it's an orb. He sailed to the west and felt he had succeeded in proving the world is round, that he'd got to India. And to this day, the Caribbean is sometimes referred to as the West Indies. The indigenous peoples of the Americas are referred to as Indians. This is a manifestation of a big mistake. Nevertheless, it became increasingly clear to more and more people on the planet that we indeed live on an orb, that there are maybe 10 million species on the planet, 12,000 languages spoken. So since 1492, we have been getting to know each other. The oceans that were great divides, great barriers between societies, as navigation developed, as map making, as the ability to read the stars and the planets, has had a tremendous effect of creating more and more venues for interaction, for various types of interaction. So this transformation through technological transformations, this is a big part of globalization. You think of boats, navigation, you think of inland transportation through canoes, adopting indigenous people's canoe technology, for instance, in North America, the coming of the railways, the coming of motor cars. All of this transforms the relationship of human beings to time and space. Think of running an empire when you send out, the governor sends out written orders to people in the field. It might take a couple of months to get there. The person in the field would have to report back to headquarters. It might take many months before a chain of communication went out to the colonies and back to the governor's office. Think nowadays when you do email, this transformation of technology affecting the way human beings relate to one another, to time, to space. So globalization is very much a factor of transformations in technology.
During my conversation with Professor Hall, he raised many interesting points. I became interested particularly in his point about globalization and technology, globalization and science. To further find out what the connection between globalization and science is, I sat down with Professor and astrophysicist Dr. David Naylor.
Regarding the question, what is globalization? So from my perspective as a scientist, For the last 35 years I've been working in large distributed teams around the world, and starting my postdoctoral studies with the European Space Agency. And I think the European Space Agency first gave me a really good handle on what globalization in terms of space means. What it means is that projects are immensely expensive. Typically a satellite mission costs $1 billion, and when you have that, no single country can really afford it, and so you have to work with talented people distributed around the world. And for many years, before while the Cold War era was still on, scientists from Russia and Eastern Europe and Western Europe collaborated, and academia broke down boundaries that politics had set up. And I think that was really neat, that scientists were after truth, the altruistic nature of science, where you search for answers and you don't have preconceived ideas of what those might be, but you really want to get to the root of the problem. And so as the problems became bigger, as science progressed, technology drove it. And so theoretical science was a little behind that, because you could do theoretical work in a somewhat isolated position, but even theoreticians need to get together to forge ideas and to challenge each other. And so the same kind of thing that worked in experimental science actually, I think, occurred in theoretical astrophysics, areas like cosmology, which have now become what we refer to as a precise science because of the knowledge gained through instrumentation. And of course that brings together communities from around the world. So today I think science is truly globalized. If you look at the number of space agencies, I believe there are 14 space agencies now, and they work together in launching projects, experiments, and ideas from one country are translated to another. So to give an example, I worked at the European Space Agency on an early mission called the Infrared Space Observatory, and that begat another space mission called Herschel. Herschel has 8 countries and 19 institutions on the one experiment that we lead here at Lethbridge on called the Spire instrument, and that just kind of gives a flavor, and it's very difficult to challenging to work across so many time zones. The success of Herschel has begat another space mission called Speaker, which is led by the Japanese Space Agency, and so now we're collaborating with Japan and Europe, and it gets bigger and bigger, and you really cannot do this without a global perspective on science. So I look at knowledge as an expanding boundary, and where you push back a bubble, and you work very hard, and you know a great deal about very little. And so you get these experts that are pushing their own bubble and the boundary of knowledge forward. And in order to harness that talent to do greater things, you need to take expertise from one area and another. And to me, that's what I would mean by globalization, taking gurus in specific subfields and weaving them together for the common good on major initiatives that will drive us forward. And we look at the world today, the biggest project, the biggest science project is probably ITER, which is nuclear fusion, and that's got a team from, oh, goodness knows how many countries. I mean, China, India, the nations that really are desperate for energy, the US and Europe, and nuclear fusion has got a lot of challenges that will be met by combining strengths. So that's a ground-based analog of a space-based mission. There are many space-based missions that involve many partners, and I think the global nature of science is that we have to work together. In a way, science brings us together, and in a way, the hope for humanity is that the breaking down of political borders and boundaries and working together for the common good. You know, will the civilization, we have the means to kill everybody on the earth many times over. The question is, you know, how do we stop that happening? Because we also have the smarts to work towards cures for cancer, solve the energy problem, explore the universe, maybe send people to Mars, and so forth. So I think from the science perspective, we've actually been doing this global thing for many years. We've recognized that when we have a common focus that's not driven by financial or socio-economic requirements, but just a pure search for the unbridled truth, then we're all on the same page, pushing in the same direction, and that has worked even through the Cold War era.